And even though like there are like you see 4 steps there, there's a lot to each of those. Like you would have subtitles under each of them. Like Linda said, there's lots of like reflexes that need to come into play. Some of the reflexes don't last very long. They kickstart something else and that reflex goes away and then they work on something else. So it's like very complicated.
And a lot of our children that have issues completely miss often the crawling and creeping. A lot of our learning issue kiddos, very rarely do I see a child with a learning disability label come in who has those levels of the brain that's crawling and creeping levels organized. Almost never are those organized levels.
I gave a presentation probably 5 years ago to a group of teachers, and I talked about the importance of crawling and creeping to learning appropriately and how there's a huge connection between inappropriate crawling and creeping and learning disabilities. And this one teacher, she said, you know, come to think of it, last week she said I had all the kids doing an obstacle course in the gym, and you know, she said some of those kids could not do that. And she says, every one of those kids that couldn't do that had learning issues. The ones that did well were great, had no problems in the classroom. The ones that you kind of expected were not really working to their fullest potential were the ones that maybe could do it sort of, but not really 100%.
Huge correlation. Children need freedom to explore. They need to be down there in the least restrictive environment when they're children. They need to be on their tummies, extraordinarily important. Sitting is a dead end. Do not ever teach a child to sit. Once they're sitting,
yeah, they don't. When a colleague and I were in Haiti a couple of years ago at an orphanage, and out of necessity, they taught the young children to sit before they could crawl or creep because it was just easier to feed them when they were in a sitting position. Those children had no mobility, huge developmental delays. We put them on their tummies. They had no idea how to move. They had no idea how to get out of the sitting position, so they were stuck there. They had no idea how to get themselves into the sitting position, so they couldn't get there if they wanted to.
okay. Just for a look, there's the cross pattern, actually with a pattern in place. But you can see the left knee is bent to pretend you can see it. The left foot is up, and the left hand is back. The right hand is forward, and the right leg is straight. That is the correct cross pattern. You can see the left knee is forward, and the right hand is forward, and the left hand is back, and the left knee is back. That is the correct cross pattern, creep.
I think those are pictures of some very involved owls. Is that not right?
Yeah, that's what we're working on a project, yeah. Seeing phenomenal results. But we don't have
Oh,
time.
this is a pet peeve of mine. Can I take this?
Yes.
Okay. When we were young, and I'll say I'm a few decades old, we did not have we did not have walkers, we did not have swings, we did not have playpens. We were stuck on the floor, we were stuck playing in the cupboards, we were stuck outside in the dirt, eating some of it, who knows what we ate, I don't know, banging pots and pans. We were actually stimulating our brains in a very good way. This is all bad stuff. Bad, 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 bad. In fact, if I'm correct, I think walkers have been outlawed in Canada. And they outlawed them because they thought that kids, well, I mean, it's true, yes, a lot of kids did go downstairs and walk because that was bad, but also they were like developmentally delaying our children because once you get a child vertical, like, it's a whole new world. Forget about getting them down on their stomachs. But as long as you can keep them on their stomachs, like down on the floor, moving around, they don't know that there's a different world out there. They will developmentally get to the sitting, the crawling, and the standing, and the walking when they are ready, typically.
Okay, we're going to have to really pick up the pace.
Yes.
So guys, hang in there with us. We got to move. When the brain is disorganized, okay, information is not getting in correctly, things will be confused, the result will be function is not what it should be, and that is an extraordinarily frustrating place for you, the parent, the child, and the teacher. What a frustrating place. So what we want to talk about is receiving information. Again, the first step of learning for any child, no matter what their label is, the first step of learning is getting the information into the brain through touch, taste, smell, hearing, and seeing. That's how information gets into the brain. So let's talk about tactility a little bit, because this is a huge piece. If you can't feel it, you
How many here have a high pain tolerance?
Not too many.
Not too many. That's not neurologically efficient. You have to have it. And we all have areas of inefficiency, that's why. But it's not neurologically efficient to have a high pain tolerance. You need to have an appropriate awareness of pain.
The children that have oodles of ear infections and nobody knows because they don't feel it to tell you they're having a problem, that's a significant issue. I had a little girl once with a chromosome disorder whose mom was in the bathroom working, didn't hear a little girl come in. Next thing she looks, the little girl has her curling iron up to her lips, sizzling her lip away. She didn't feel it. It's important to feel how we are supposed to feel so that we can have these awareness of dangers. Had a little boy years ago we worked with who came from Romania, severely brain injured. When the family first saw him, he was a wonderful little boy, normal, typical little boy in an orphanage in a playpen crib. And long story short, when they found the baby, he was wrapped in plastic, thrown in the corner. They thought presumed death. He had cigarette burns all over his body, 14 fractures when he got back to the U.S. And they did x-rays. He had 14 fractures and he was cortically blind. This family for 2 years tried to work with his blindness and teach him to use a walking cane for the blind. And I kept saying, come to MD, come to MD. And she goes, as soon as we get this blindness under control. Well, after 2 years, the Deaf and Blind Commission stated that he was hopelessly retarded because he could not learn to use a walking stick. So then she came and did MD, and we said, well, the reason he can't use a walking stick is because he can't feel his hand. How can you hold it if you don't feel your hand? And we said, oh, by the way, don't give up on the sight. So we taught this child to feel his body. And lo and behold, he got about 75–80% of his vision in as well through stimulating the brain. Now let's take that down to some of our learning issue kiddos. Okay, you can't feel your body. Well, what about those kids that have the death grip on their pencils? And you try to teach them, honey, this is how you hold a pencil. This is the most efficient way. Your hand won't get tired. And no matter what you do, they have a death grip on that pencil. It's because the brain isn't feeling that hand like it should. You can work all day long trying to teach them how to hold it, and they'll never get it. Or you can work on the neurological organization and the neurological system, train the brain to feel its hand. And then the rest just comes automatically. A few symptoms of neurological inefficiency.
Bedwetting. Yeah, that was the problem with my son. Deep pressure awareness is also knowing that the bladder is full. So that's why when he was 12 and a half, he still wet the bed because he did not know when his bladder was full. A child that does not like to be hugged, plays too rough, or has bruises, don't know where they're coming from.
The one you brace yourself when they're coming because you know they're going to knock you over.
Yeah.
Or when they go by the baby, you're not going to know.
Don't touch.
Gentle, gentle.
Oh, tags, they're always cutting their tags out of their clothes. They don't like the way their clothes feel. They're very fussy about it. Oversensitive to smells. Oh, what's that smell? I hate that smell. Or makes them sick or hyperactive. Kids that just, you cannot get them to try new things, new textures, new tastes.
You know, they won't eat good food, but by golly, they'll eat the dirt and the rocks and the feces.
Yeah.
And those who don't chew or swallow.
Or just fill their mouths until their cheeks are bulging. They do that until they get tactile input.
That's right. It takes that amount of pressure for them to feel. So when they're hugging you and it's like squeezing your neck and you're like, okay, I'm on, it's because it takes that intensity for them to get the signals to the brain.
And just as an aside, kids that don't like to be hugged, we think that it's deep pressure, it's often the surface things. So if you get in there, your kids that, no, I don't want to hug, just get in there and give them a good bear hug. That will probably bypass that and they'll like that.